Next up, we're going to be hearing about the state of Open edX from Ed Zarakor and Jenna Mikowski from the Center for Reimagining Learning. Ed is the Vice President of Engineering for the Open edX project and the Chair of the Open edX Technical Oversight Committee. Jenna is the Senior Project Manager for the Open edX project and lead of the Open edX Product Working Group, and they will also be joined by a special guest. Ed?
Thanks, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Welcome to Open edX and welcome to the State of Open edX talk. It's always super energizing for me to look out into the crowd and see so many familiar faces, people that have been working on this project for so many years. Really enjoy this event, and it keeps me going for the remainder of the year. Every year we're able to meet in person, so I'm glad we're past the COVID times and we're here together again for the second year in a row. I wanted to briefly mention some housekeeping stuff. If you're tweeting to Twitter at all, we have a hashtag for conference materials, so please use the Open edX 2023 hashtag. And if you have any questions or content that you want to post for folks at the conference, please use the events channel in the Open edX Slack. If you're not registered, you can follow that bit.ly link to get yourself registered. And I wanted to start by, really appreciated Cheryl's presentation, but wanted to start by thanking MIT Open Learning. Their generous support in sponsoring us and letting us use the space at MIT has made this conference possible. As she said, we're in one of the most iconic classrooms in all of MIT, which doesn't inspire the least bit of imposter syndrome at all. But let's give another round of applause to the MIT folks for hosting us. It's really important. And I'm especially grateful to be at MIT this year and to be hosting part of our conference in the Stata Center because it is literally where the Open edX project began. I mentioned this in the welcome letter in the program, but the first lines of code that were written that are now the platform that we all work on and use today were written in a small room in the third floor of Stata Center in 2011. Clarify that I was not involved in 2011. I came later in the project, but we actually have an engineer who works on tcrl today who was amongst those first 3 engineers cramped into the third floor of Stata Center writing the platform. So it feels really important to be back at MIT and Stata this year as we are continuing our journey as an open source project and trying to become the inclusive duocracy that we aspire to be as a project. All right. And I want to thank our sponsors as well. Our first sponsor, our Cornerstone sponsor, is Universidad Tecnología del Uruguay, UTEC. UTEC is an organization from Uruguay that concentrates on providing educational opportunities to college students outside of the urban areas. They serve students in all 19 provinces of Uruguay, and the majority of their students are the first student to attend university in their family. So it's a really, really great mission. They've been using Open edX since 2014. We're glad to have them here, and we really appreciate their sponsorship. And our premier sponsor is edX, also long-standing members of the community. They've been contributors to the Open edX project since 2013. They provide a wide range of services related to the platform. edX, UTEC, and the rest of our sponsors have tables in the sponsor hall. I encourage you to stop by and speak with them and understand what they're doing. So thanks to edX as well. So let's get into the meat of the presentation and review the state of Open edX. And this presentation is going to be broken down into 3 segments. I'm going to talk about the present of the project. Jenna Mikowski is going to come up and talk about product management for the open source project and kind of the future direction and priorities. And then finally, we're going to be joined by Adrian Devison of Empower, Empower is a user of Open edX and member of the community. It's doing some really amazing work, and we'll learn more about the Empower organization and the project that they are working on. All right. So let's start with the present. I'm going to talk about three main things here. I want to review the Open edX vision statement that was developed by the product working group in the fall and reviewed by the technical oversight committee of the project in December. I want to review the reach of the platform. We'll talk a little bit about some metrics about how many instances of the platform exist, how many users have been learning on it, how many degrees have been issued. And finally, we'll look at community health, some key metrics that help us understand how healthy we are as a community, because our community is the engine that advances the Open edX platform. Ooh, really? Okay. That advances the Open edX platform, so we need to keep a close eye on our health. And also, I can see from the timing cards that reviewing the recently shipped features is probably going to get skipped over, but Jenna is going to give us a tour of how you can track that continuously in real time when she gets into the segment about the product, the how-to for the product roadmap. All right, so let's start with the vision statement. This was developed by a segment of the product working group who conducted interviews, surveys, and worked with the community to try to kind of compose a mission based on everything that we valued, and I'll present that today. This has been presented in other forums. You may have seen it, but if you haven't, we'll talk it through today. So the vision statement, as they defined it, was that we're leveraging open source to democratize education and power advances in learning. And let's kind of break that down a little bit. All right. The first part of it is about how we do it, and I don't think this is controversial. We're an open source project, we're an open source community. We believe that communities that have shared values and have a shared requirements for the platform, when they collaborate in the open and create open source software, create powerful dynamics, and so leveraging open source is pretty obvious to us. The next two parts of it are really what we aspire to do. The first is to democratize education. And we'll dig into this a little bit more in the next slides, because we want this to be more than just pretty words. We want this to be something that helps us frame our priorities and inspire us as we move forward. And the second part of the what is power advances in learning. And this has been a part of the mission of edX and Open edX since very early. It was framed originally as improving education online and on campus, and it continues to be an important part of our mission, but maybe a place where we stand to improve a little bit. All right, so let's start with democratizing education. For me, democratizing education boils down into two key things that we want to achieve. One is improving access to educational opportunities of high quality for students all over the world, and remove impediments to those opportunities whenever we can. Technology is an enabling tool to help us do that, but it is not necessary and sufficient. It requires also the organizations that produce the content to make it available to students, and a commitment to knocking down barriers to access. And the second part of it is kind of impact. So the platform itself as software can't guarantee impact in the lives of our learners, but ultimately that's what we're aspiring to do. So we need to have a platform that can deliver the highest quality educational opportunities, and we need a way to measure the efficacy of the different things that the platform does, and to prioritize advancing the platform in that respect. All right, and then let's talk a little bit about what driving advances in learning could look like. I think this is, again, the vision statement is aspirational. We don't claim that these are things that we've already achieved. These are things that we want to achieve as a community. All right, so we obviously have the Open edX platform. We're all familiar with that. The platform has some key features in it today that really enable experimentation and innovation. Extension points like XBlocks, things like A/B testing, cohorts, that are really powerful ways of conducting tests within online courses. And as students interact with with that content, we produce data and learning traces. Everyone's familiar with the tracking logs. We also have XAPI versions of data traces. That data can then become the input into research and advances in learning. And there have been a lot of interesting papers. I mean, and I can probably quote the number of papers that have been produced from edX data, but a lot of interesting research has been produced from the data that we generate on the edX platform and also in other instances of the platform. But for me, the key thing that we haven't done well enough is this last arrow, is how do we then turn that research into advances in learning, into a complete feedback loop that helps us prioritize and advance the platform in a way that makes it more efficacious for our users. So that, I think, is a challenge that lies before us and one that I'll present to you. So let's figure out how to do that. Okay. And then, in summary, this Friday, we have the town hall meeting. And this is the proposed vision statement from the product working group. I think the town hall would be a great time to come and add your voice to this conversation, to ask any questions, clarifying questions, or to take us to task if you think we've gotten something wrong here. So please attend the town hall on Friday. Let's have a robust discussion about the vision for the platform. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about reach. We have some statistics about the usage of the platform. This is a place we've invested in the last couple years because our ability to determine who was using our open source project was somewhat limited. It's important to know the reach of the project because it indicates a couple things. One is, are we building something that people care about, that people want? And also, the reach of the platform determines the size of the network of our community. The size of the network determines who is contributing and how many people are contributing and how much value we're creating. So it's important for those reasons. So we have a new technology we've brought online to help us determine how many instances we have. We know that today there are more than 4,500 live instances of the Open edX platform on the public internet. Across those instances, we know that there are more than 70,000 courses that are being offered on Open edX today. And we know that across the instances, this number is the hardest to gather because we rely on people telling us how many registered users they have. We don't have any way of harvesting that data. But we know we have at least 77 million users who have interacted with the Open edX platform. Okay. And I don't think I'm going to fool anybody as I draw my second flywheel of the presentation, the first one being a square and the second one being a triangle. But I'm going to do it anyway, right? So just sort of to reinforce why reach is so important in open source projects is because the greater the reach we have, some segment of the community that you're touching or contributing back and innovating on the platform, you can increase the size of that segment, but the bigger the overall network, the more people you have contributing and investing. That investment generates additional value for the platform, which in turn makes it more attractive to new users and increases the reach. And if we can continue going around this virtuous circle, then we, over time, build the most efficacious platform and can have the greatest impact in the lives of our learners across the world. Oops. Okay. But the engine behind all of this is you, the community that develops Open edX and uses Open edX. So let's take a quick look at the health of the community based on two things, on some statistics we can measure and some stories that I'll try to tell. Okay, so contribution to community metrics we'll start with. A salute to working groups, which I think are one of the most important parts of our project today. And then something briefly about a program that we're doing around maintainership. Okay. Right, today we know we have about 24 different organizations that are contributing to the project. Just be full transparency, that's pretty flat. That hasn't changed a lot over the last couple of years. We have 333 people in the last year who contributed code to the platform. And we have 10 active working groups. So This is interesting because last year at Lisbon, we had around 5 working groups that were active. So it's increased 2 times in that time, and I think for a very good reason, because it's probably the best way to participate in the project. And the working groups drive so much value to us, and we'll have a specific slide to talk about them later. We have 50 core contributors. Core contributors are the folks who are who have made a personal commitment to dedicate their time continuously to the project. They have additional responsibilities that come along with that, but this group of folks they're the most dedicated contributors across the entire project. Last year, this was 41. We've grown it by 50. By the end of next week, I expect this to be 53. And this is a place where we're going to continue to invest in growing that cohort. We have 13 officially supported languages on the platform. Officially supported languages are languages that are translated to a rate of 100% for our Open edX releases. This is up from 10 last year, so also a significant improvement in the languages that we support on the platform. And it all adds up to what we see here. This is a graph of contributions over the last 2 years measured as lines of code added to the platform. The red line is the trend line. You can see that we've seen a steady increase. It's lumpy, but we're seeing a steady increase in contribution over time. Lines of code added is not the perfect metric. There isn't one, but I think it's a good enough metric for us. If we look at this cumulatively, it represents a 54% increase year over the last 2 years in lines of code added to the platform. Okay. Oops, just jumped ahead. So quickly, I wanted to talk about some sources of growth. One of the big sources of growth has been the innovation of micro front ends. That's a technology that's really taken off. We now have, I think, 28 micro front ends. There's a lot of development energy around them, and that's driven a lot of increase in contribution. TCRIL has been funding contributions for critical areas in the platform where we see gaps that will, filling those gaps will benefit everyone across the community. So that's another source of growth of contribution. And finally, the growth in core contributors has been another area where the growth in the people participating in that program and dedicating a significant amount of their time to the platform has been important there as well. And I want to spend some time talking about, the metaphor we often use about Open edX is it feels like we're building the plane while we're flying it. In this case, we're just building something very complex as a group. So as I mentioned, we've got 10 working groups. Those are the folks that coordinate the work, they plan the work, they determine what the priorities are, and they actually do the work. Working groups focus on anything from translation and marketing to DevOps to deprecation to releasing the platform. Basically, all of the critical activities of the project happen in working groups. So if you're interested in becoming participating more directly in the project, working groups are the place to go. And this Friday, the working groups will be having sessions where you can drop in and meet the members and see what they're working on. And so if there are working groups that are particularly interesting to you, please join on Friday. And also, I don't have time to summarize all of the great things the working groups have done. However, they have all produced reports of their priorities and accomplishments for the last 6 months, and they're in the wiki, and I'll share a link into the events channel later, so if you want to follow up on what the specific working groups are doing, please check in there. All right. And finally, I wanted to say, when I asked the community what we should talk about in the state of Open edX, several people said, let's talk about maintainership. But we don't have time to talk about it in depth today. But I wanted to mention that we're having an online meetup on April 27th. And we're going to do a deep dive into maintainership and the state of maintainership for Open edX. So if that's an interesting topic for you, please join us then. All right. Okay. And then quickly, I'll talk about some features that have shipped recently. And then Jenna, this is the present version of things. And these are focused on the personas that we're tracking in the product working group. So a lot of these features, I'll give credit where due, were developed by engineers at 2U or in 2U via blended projects. So the new problem editor UX, new text editor UX have been launched. Those were contributed by 2U, so thank you to 2U for that. I think advanced Aura staff grader also was. On the platform, on the learner side, I think everyone is aware of the large new discussions rollout. We now have several different discussion forums that are available on the platform. Discussions have been a long-standing point of pain for members of the community, so I think everyone's happy to see options and also a very much improved native discussions offering. And team-based auras, there was a session on that yesterday. Those are great. So if you have, Udo, I think his session was recorded as Zoom. So if you want to know more about team-based auras, please watch that. And then some platform-focused stuff. Some big ones like runtime configuration for micro front ends was something that came out in Olive. It was a big win for micro front end development. Lots of investment in tutor improvements and platform documentation. Okay. Now I want to hand over to Jenna, who is the leading product at T-Krill. She's going to speak about sort of our product management processes and the platform priorities. And hand the clicker to you.
Thank you, Ed. Can everyone hear me? Okay, awesome. So like Ed mentioned, this portion of the talk is focused on looking forward to product plans and some of our priorities and where we're investing. But I wanted to take a couple of minutes here at the beginning to look back, because I think by looking back, that will help us to think about how we move forward. Some of you may remember the slide from last year. I presented this slide at the State of Open edX talk in Lisbon. And if you don't remember, or if you weren't here, this is the main topic that we addressed last year in the state was how we would spend the next year building a product organization within the Open edX community. And this double diamond was the framework that I proposed we use to build that product organization. So as a quick recap, the double diamond framework is a pretty popular method or methodology of product delivery. And on the left side of the process, so it's a workflow. The left side is more product-oriented, so focusing on discovery, around new features, focusing on definition of features. This is where you find all of your user stories, all of your market research, all your market data, everything that you use to drive what you build on the platform and why. And the second half of the double diamond framework is the technical execution side, right? Development and delivery. And what I observed last year at the talk was that a lot of the energy and momentum around the project tends to be more focused on this side, on the implementation side, with less of a focus, at least in the open community, on the product side. And so I had proposed that we focus on spending the year to reshift that balance a little bit. That was last year, and I'm really happy to say that we've made a ton of progress in the past year. I'm very proud of how product managers across the community have really come together and helped us to build a product organization for the Open edX community as a whole. So thank you to everybody. Today I'd like to highlight 3 of the key processes and artifacts that we, as an open source community with the product organization, have built over the past year so that we could really bring this framework to life. Those 3 things are the product working group, feature development in the open, and the roadmap. So let's start by answering a couple of basic questions. Who is Open edX product and what do we do? This is Open edX product. A lot of these are the product leaders from organizations across the community. Many of you are here today. And this is the product working group. This is the engine that drives the Open edX project. We've had folks representing nearly a dozen organizations in the group over the past year, including 2U, T-Krill, Edly, EduNext, OpenCraft, and many more. So the next question would be, what does product do? We coordinate decision-making about the product, which features get prioritized, where we invest. And these decisions are all based on data, on market research, on user feedback, and we've been able to create channels that we can actually aggregate this across the community. So we're pulling this data together from across many different sources, which gives us a holistic view of the project. And so this time last year, the product working group was just an idea, and we actually met for the first time in Lisbon to kind of brainstorm about what we would do, what we would focus on in the first year. And like Ed mentioned, we have published our impact report. But I wanted to highlight a couple of accomplishments here that are actually tied to this bigger topic of building the product organization within the community. And so in Lisbon, we decided that we would focus on 3 priorities in the first year. Number 1 was defining what the platform is. Number 2 was streamlining the contribution process, specifically the product review process of OSPRs. And the third was making the feature development process visible and open. And now, a year later, we have, for this first one, defining what the platform is, we have OEP 57, which is an Open edX proposal, which outlines a strategy and a plan to define what our core product will be. We have a team that's dedicated to streamlining this process, to creating a workflow to help us review the massive backlog of PRs. And we have a process that we've tested for making development visible. We've learned a lot from this process. We still have a lot to learn. But as a result, now we have a product management wiki that has over half a dozen public approach memos, user stories, specs that outline what we're actually building early on in the product process. And I'll mention as well, all 3 of these have dedicated talks during the conference over the next couple of days. If you're interested in any of these, find the talk and join us, and we'll dive deeply. So last year was all about laying the foundation, and this year is about execution. How are we going to do these things? We will continue to define and actually build the core product offering. We will clear the backlog of all of the PRs and also continue to make that process better. And we'll continue to do all of our development in the open. OK, so that's the past. Let's talk about what we're focusing on now and what we'll be focusing on in the next 6 to 12 months. So Ed mentioned earlier that we are prioritizing projects that will support our mission, right? So our mission is to improve access to online learning, and our mission is to improve the outcome or the impact of online learning. And I'm going to talk about a couple of areas that we're prioritizing for investment over the next year that align with that mission. And I'll also use them as examples to actually demonstrate how we are building these things in the open. So on the access front, one major focus for us is the core product offering. So the core product offering is rooted in one of the big challenges of the platform. And that is that the platform is a little bit difficult to define, which may sound a little bit weird, but it supports a lot of diverse use cases, right? And because of this, that's great, right? But because of this, it makes it a little bit challenging sometimes to install. It's inefficient to customize. But more importantly, from a product perspective, it can make it difficult to create a strategy. Like, who are we building this for, and what are we building? And so the goal of the core product offering is to define a clear set of features that come supported in the out-of-the-box community install. So it should be very clear to users what you're getting and why you're getting those features. On top of that, we want to make it even easier to customize. So we're going to be building a clear catalog of tools. So things like a catalog of XBlocks, catalogs of LTI apps, plugins, that will help us to streamline and simplify the experience and to enable easier customization so that we can support this diversity of use cases that are really at the heart of the narrative. In terms of developing this in the open, even though this is a product project, we put it through the OEP process because it introduces a lot of new terms, a lot of new concepts. The OEP process is the Open edX proposal process. This enabled us to socialize it with the community on both the technical and the product side. We were able to integrate a lot of great feedback in that process, so it helped us to really shape it in real time. And this is a really interesting model, I think, for us to explore going forward. What other best practices or workflows exist in the open source community, and how can we bring product into those processes? So this is one example. Anyone can take a look at OEP 57. Another area of investment for us next year is our taxonomy initiative, our learning taxonomy initiative. This aligns more with the impact side of the mission. So with this project, authors will be able to align their content in courses to learning taxonomies. For example, taxonomies around competencies or taxonomies around skills. And they'll be able to add tags as well in Studio and in libraries. There's a lot of benefits to this project. One of them is that coupled with the data project, which I'll talk about in a minute, taxonomies will enable instructors to better manage and track learners as they move through content sequences. And it'll be able to hold course teams accountable, right? Are students actually learning what the unit or the module promises to teach? Taxonomies will also help us to set the platform up and sort of forward-looking to better align with third-party adaptive tools and other services that customize, content recommendations based on learner profiles and learner interests. In terms of developing this in the open, this is part of our bigger modular learning initiative, and we've been developing this in the open from the get-go. We put together a group of about 8 to 10 stakeholders from across the community, across different organizations, because we wanted to make sure that the data we were getting would represent the majority of the community. We wanted to make sure that the user stories we had were representative of everyone here and all of the clients that you serve. We put all of this on the product wiki, and so far, all of the documents around this and related projects have generated over 100 views and about 30 different comment threads, which have also helped us to shape these projects in real time. And finally, a third area of investment for us, which also aligns with the impact side of our mission, is to improve learner analytics. We'll be replacing Insights with OARS, which is the Open Analytics Reference System. A couple things about this project. We will be aligning the platform to open data standards, and this will unlock a lot of interesting and exciting opportunities around reporting, because we'll be able to get near real-time learner analytics, which again, coupled with things like the taxonomy projects, now course teams will be able to have better insight into learner engagement, learner progress, and how learners are understanding the content at very granular levels so that they can make decisions about their course in more real time. In terms of developing this in the open, this initiative is being driven by the Data Working Group, and again, their boards and all of their work is available in the public. And if you'd like a full view of all of the areas of investment, these are some more highlights. The best place to go is the Open edX roadmap. I remember standing up here at the conference last year saying that the roadmap at that point was kind of a little bit of an experiment, and it was more of at that point, it was more like a directory of current initiatives. Right? We were asking everybody to contribute the things that they were building, and it is still that. But I'm also happy to say that we've moved beyond that as well. As we get these projects off the ground, as we start to build backlogs and prioritize, the roadmap is starting to develop a bit more of a strategic arc as well, which is really exciting. And one of the questions that I've heard quite a bit from folks is, like, how do I stay up to date? How do I stay on top of everything that's happening? And so I wanted to actually give a quick, 30-second crash course on how to read the roadmap while I've got everyone's attention here. So you can see that the roadmap is organized by platform area. At the top, there's a tab for every major area of the platform. And this is kind of your navigation through the roadmap. If there's a specific area of the platform that you're interested in, you can go to the tab. So you can see that this one is highlighting the content libraries. Every platform area has a set of tickets. So these tickets are high level, right? They're meant to just capture an overview of the project and give you a quick overview of what the impact and what the value of the project is. If you're interested in diving more deeply into the projects at a coarse-grained view, we also have a README for every section of the platform where we link it out to the specific boards. And so, for example, if you're interested in the taxonomy project, you can find a link to that particular board here, and you can track at a more detailed level all of the issues that we've groomed where we're currently at. And finally, a quick reminder that the roadmap is still a collaborative effort, and we need everybody's help to help us continue to build it and flesh it out. There's two ways that you can participate in getting your voice onto the roadmap. In the platform roadmap repo, we have two templates that are meant to help you navigate your way through contributing. The first template is an issue submission. So if you have work that's already in progress, if you have work that you'd like to contribute, put eventually through the PR process, there's a template to help you add that contribution to the roadmap. The second is a feature request. So this is newer. If you want to see something added to the roadmap, but it's not there, there's a ticket template as well to help you. You can add it to our backlog, and we will have it visible. Does this guarantee that we're going to build that feature? No, not necessarily. It's up to the product organization of Open edX to help us prioritize that backlog. But this is a project that's a do-ocracy, right? And if you want to influence which projects get prioritized, this is an open invitation, right? Join the product working group. That's the best way to make your voice heard. Awesome. And now I would like to invite up Adrian, our special guest. Adrian Devizin is the executive director of Empower, a not-for-profit organization that teaches computer science to high school students of color, starting in the 9th grade. Empower has been using the Open edX platform to deliver the online elements of the curriculum, and we're very honored to have you here today, Adrian.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Adrian Devizin, the Executive Director of Empower. Empower is a nonprofit creating the school-to-career pipeline for students of color. We teach software development as a multi-year program to help increase diversity in tech, end generational poverty cycles, and create an equitable future for everybody. Our students join our program in 9th grade and remain throughout their whole high school career. In 9th grade, they learn the foundations of software development and undergo leadership training. In 10th grade, they think of app ideas to impact their community, and then we have a pitch competition, and whoever wins, we actually build that app idea together, and the students then incorporate it. So we increase the number of minority and women-owned businesses and show students the power in their work. And the 3rd year, our students obtain high school internships with our partners, and that helps our students bring additional income, especially for our students in low-income areas, and at the same time, make sure our students graduate with 1 to 2 years of experience before they even leave high school. They continue those internships into their final year and also learn, professional networking and soft business skills. So when they graduate, we can work with our partners to ensure that they all have careers waiting on them. Our current graduates make an average of $70,000 within 1 year of graduating high school. In order to scale a program like this, it's really hard to manually grade everything, so I had to start getting creative. And inspired by LeetCode, I decided that we can create a platform that allows teachers to create an assignment within a couple minutes and have it auto-graded by a remote server. This would also allow us to reduce costs by shipping every student a MacBook, and at the same time, we can support over 100 different languages so we can keep adding courses as we go along. In the spirit of democratizing education, we made sure this was free and open source, available for everyone on GitHub to contribute to and utilize. So here's a demo of Koppen, our platform. We start on the assignments dashboard, and then we can go down and we can actually create a new assignment. We give the assignment a title, and we'll start with Hello World, because we're all developers here. We give it a reference ID, and this was what edX will use to know which problem to solve. You can give it a total attempts, which 0 means unlimited, and anything above that is the actual number. Then we use Markdown to paste the instructions, a success message, and a failure message to encourage your students in case they don't complete the problem. We can scroll down then, and we go to our assignment codes, where we can add which languages the students will complete it in, and any unit tests that are used to grade this. So we select our language. We can decide if it's the primary language. We can then decide if it's injectable code, which means we will hide all the code you may need to run unit tests and have these brackets, and that's all the student will actually see, is that empty space where the code's injected. We can provide an optional solution code in case you want your students to be able to view the actual solution to the problem. And lastly, we give our unit tests to actually grade the assignment against. Then we simply click Save. You can add as many languages as you want that are supported by your server, and it's really easy to add a language. All you do is give it a name, a MIME that's from CodeMirror, a regex that helps us parse the actual unit test error, and a CodeMirror URL. And once we do that, we can then go into seeing how we bring this live in edX. And so just like creating any other problem from a X block, you just go to Advanced, you'll select Swift plugin, and then it'll load it into your screen. After that, we click Edit, and all you have to pass in is the reference ID, the URL to the Koppen server, and then the API key given to your user on Koppen. And after that, we can simply publish the assignment, and we'll see it, and we can actually view the live version once our video catches up. And right here, we see the markdown is formatted as HTML, and the student can select any languages. We only gave it one, so they can only select Swift. And then we can actually start writing our code. Now, it's supposed to write hello world, but our student just wrote hello. So it successfully outputted the code, but then when they go to test it, we'll notice that it's gonna give them an error, of course. And so what it does is it tests the code on our doctor server is what we named it, and it gives them back the unit test failure. And so now the student can go and correct the error, submit the code again, and now when it successfully tests and passes, it'll actually update the grade for the student assignments for them. And yay, now you're a developer. Because we gave them an optional solution code, they can click the solution tab to view what the solution was as well. And so in less than 3 minutes, you can create and allow your students to run programming assignments on your server. So how you can help. But yeah, how you can help. Internships. For any of you who know of any, our students are always looking for internships. What I like to tell people is, in the school we operate primarily out of in South Atlanta High School, the average income for a household as a total household income is $10 an hour. So lots of our students don't eat, or they don't have clothes, and the average software development intern makes $25 an hour. So providing an internship to these students, you're effectively tripling the income of that household for the year. Donations go to buying more MacBooks for the students. We provide them all with free MacBooks, headphones, internet grants if they don't have internet at home, meal plans for our low-income students, and clothes for those who don't have them as well. And volunteers. Developing Koppen took a long time, and if you check my GitHub history, I was still submitting stuff last night. So
Congratulations, you're a developer.
So anyone who's good with security, I'd love for you to come on, because I was not a cybersecurity engineer. UX as well, that was never my strong point, but writing the code, I got that done. And so I'd love for you to come in and help out, help build Koppen into something even bigger. Thank you.
So we're all going to be up here for questions. Feel free to ask questions of myself, Jenna, or Adrian. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
And there are mics down here, so please come to the mic so we can record your question if you have one.
If you have a question, raise your hand. Anyone? No? They nailed it? No questions? Are these live?
I didn't see one, and maybe I missed it in the slide. Is there a URL or a QR code for Empower?
Yeah, I should have put one in the slide, huh? But empowerco.org, EMPOWRCO.org, and I'll be sure to, you can also Google that, and you'll find the GitHub that has Koppen and the rest of our servers on it.
I want to ask Adrian how you do presentations that smoothly. I'm inspired in a number of ways by you right now. Any actual questions? Okay. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you.
Obviously, generative AI is a buzzword recently. Is there any plan to incorporate AI tools into the product roadmap?
Great question.
Not at the moment. Jenna.
I was just going to say, like, as Jenna was unpacking for us, the roadmap is generated by this group of people here, not just the folks at the front of the room. So this is probably an unpopular opinion since everybody's so excited about generative AI right now, but I think let's think about the value we want to provide to our learners and how we want to change their lives rather than finding a way to use a technology that really looks really cool. But if we have ideas about how we will really impact the lives of our learners with generative AI, let's get them on the roadmap. And let's get everybody kind of refining those ideas and helping us prioritize them and understanding what we should be building.
Yeah, so I have a question for you, Jenna. I'm really amazed by what you achieved in just 1 year. I'm curious to have your perspective on what are the unique challenges that you would face on defining a product for an open source community where people can just join in and propose to build stuff that's not necessarily on the roadmap.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the biggest challenges that we've run into, which is kind of challenges are always opportunities, right? But the biggest challenge is that there are so many use cases that the platform is used for, which is great, right? But it presents some challenges in terms of deciding what we prioritize. A couple of examples, right? We've got the platform is running MOOCs and online degrees, right? Those are two very, very different sets of features that are required to make those use cases successful. But in terms of, this kind of goes to the core product offering, which is one of the things I touched on. We'll talk about this more later tomorrow as well. One of the strategies for the platform is that we want to simplify it so that we've got a core that can support as much diversity as possible. And this concept of the catalog system where we can be indexing and adding tools that you can use that are based on the type of customization you want to build, so what you're teaching or the type of teaching that you're doing. So the idea is that we simplify in order to broaden out again. And I think that's one of the strategies that we've used to approach that. But relatedly, though, is that because there's so many use cases, they're coming from so many different organizations. So we're not just building for one particular set of customers or one set of clients or one group of people. We're building for everybody, like, exponentially. And so working with different methods to try and gather user stories from various stakeholders across the community has been one tactic that we've used to try and get a broader representation of needs and pain points across the community. But yeah, we're always open to continuing to evolve those concepts and ideas, and hopefully we'll be able to tap into some more experimental modes in the next year as well.
We have one last question from anyone?
I would love to hear about one or two of the student app ideas at Empower that the students wanted to build.
Yeah, definitely. So the one we're building now is the students decided that job boards are just boring for them. They don't find Indeed and Monster and all those entertaining to use. So they're basically making a job board for their generation where you could apply kind of how you would use TikTok. Companies would show you cool, trendy videos of their workplace, and your application would start by an introduction using that kind of same video technology where you show short clips of yourself and what you've done. And then after that, of course, you still have your resume, but it kind of makes a more personal approach to job applications in a way that speaks to their generation. And so that one to me was really cool. And the cohort before them, that was the middle of the pandemic, and they had trouble making friends as they were going through high school. They had additional trouble because they couldn't get outside. And so they decided to create a skating app that its whole purpose was to get anybody who liked to ride wheels on bicycles, skateboards, or anything to be able to come together and to kind of throw off skating events. And so they had a couple of different unique ideas, and so I'm really proud to be able to watch it grow, and they have a bunch of other ideas that I still hope they create that weren't chosen. So